The Batman Arkham series. What can I possibly say about these games that hasn't been said already? Well, nothing. Literally everything there is to say about these games has already been said. The graphics are stunning, the voice acting is stellar, the storytelling is complex, and the combat is fluid and makes you feel like you are a vigilante of the night who hunts down criminals dressed up like a bat. Basically what I'm trying to say here is that these games understand the character of Batman. These games have been a big part of my life ever since Christmas Day of 2012, when I was just getting back into the whole superhero fandom. I opened Batman Arkham Asylum and Batman Arkham City. I had never played a Batman video game before, but I vividly remember sitting down and playing these games one after the other and being blown away by the masterful storytelling and well written characters. Fast forward a year later to Christmas of 2013, when I opened the recently released Batman Arkham Origins. After loving Asylum and City so much, the hype was real. For those next few days after Christmas, all I did was play this game. Fast forward even further to May of 2015, Batman Arkham Knight, the final game to this series, is a month away from release. There are thousands of speculative videos about the game on YouTube. I'm seeing posters for the game plastered on the sides of buses on my way to school. The hype for this game was at an all-time high. The following month, my parents surprised me with an Xbox One and a copy of the game. Thank God it was a Friday night when this happened and I didn't have to be in school the next day. I dropped whatever I was doing, set up my new Xbox, and finally, after all that build-up, sat down to play the concluding chapter to this series. Never had I been so excited. And just to top all of this off, here's my collection of Batman Arkham figurines. If you haven't figured out by now, these games are very special to me, and I've wanted to talk about them for a long time. So, with a pandemic gripping the world, I figured there was no better time to finally explain in my own way why these games are so awesome. This is my retrospective of the Batman Arkham games. So, let's kick things off by reviewing the first installment of the Arkham series, and the game that I consider to be the perfect Batman game, Batman Arkham Asylum.
Welcome to the madhouse, Batman! I set a trap and you strike gloriously!
For years, Marvel had always been superior to DC when it came to video games. Marvel had success with a lot of their games, but DC put out a big selection of games and none of them ever seemed to gain much attention. And let's not forget that DC were responsible for creating the worst superhero game ever made, Superman 64, where pretty much all you did was fly Superman through rings. This game was so bad and so broken that I think it's been deemed almost impossible to complete. It was a dark time for DC games. Then in August of 2009, Rocksteady Studios shone hope over DC games like the bat signal over Gotham City. If it wasn't for Batman Arkham Asylum, honestly, I don't know if superhero games would be at the level of quality they are today. While there were game changers for superhero games before this, like Marvel Ultimate Alliance and Spider-Man 2, in my opinion, this game really set the standards for how good superhero games could be. Out of all the Arkham games, Asylum had the biggest task. It had to get people interested with a compelling new story, but also had to stay true to the characters it was adapting in order to please long-time fans. To ensure this, the people at Rocksteady brought in Paul Dini, who was a writer of the popular animated series and of the Batman comics, and was the one who created the character of Harley Quinn. It was a great idea to bring in someone who had experience writing for Batman and who knew what they were doing. Thanks to this, the characters and tone of this game are so well realised and are handled with a lot of care, because they have someone on board who knows these characters and this world. His knowledge and experience in writing Batman really show, as the story here is an original story and yet feels like it could be another one of the comic books. The game wastes no time and starts out with Batman bringing the Joker back to Arkham Asylum after an assault on Gotham City Hall. After helping escort Joker through the prison, Batman is suspicious as Joker barely put up a fight, almost as if he wanted to be captured and brought back to Arkham. With the assistance of Harley Quinn, the Joker breaks free and begins to cause chaos throughout the asylum, releasing many inmates and pitting Batman against several other supervillains from the Rogues Gallery. Eventually, Bats finds out that Dr. Young has developed a formula known as Titan. This is essentially the chemical that Bane uses, but far more powerful and comes with more gruesome side effects. Batman discovers that it was Joker who helped fund Young's research and development of the Titan formula, so that he could use it to create an army of monsters and wage war upon Gotham. As soon as Young learned it was Joker she was working for and of his plans, she no longer wanted anything to do with it. With Young's refusal to cooperate, the Joker decided to get himself caught by Batman, brought back to the asylum and to get the Titan formula himself, and then launch his attack on Gotham. Batman must stop the Joker before he manages to get the Titan formula and create his army, whilst also confronting some familiar and not very pleasant faces along the way. The plot to Arkham Asylum draws heavily from Grant Morrison's graphic novel Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on a Serious Earth. This is one of the best Batman comics ever written and is essential reading for anyone wishing to get into Batman. The graphic novel is like this game in that it takes place entirely within Arkham Asylum and involves the Joker taking over and trapping Batman inside with all the inmates. The comic is much darker than this game, however, truly delving into the dark history of Arkham Asylum and into the minds of its patients. The decision to set this game entirely within Arkham Asylum was great. If you're going to make a Batman game where you encounter an array of his deadliest enemies, where else better to set the game than the place that houses a lot of these enemies? To put things very lightly, Arkham Asylum is a shithole. It's an awful prison with terrible treatment towards the mentally ill and a very dark history. This is very well realised in this game, with the asylum's murky hallways, winding corridors and gardens and grounds that look like they haven't been tended to in years. You truly get the sense that this place has been around for a long time, maybe over 100 years. You feel so claustrophobic as you're traversing the eerie depths of Arkham. From its cracked brick walls to its dim lighting, you can just feel the atmosphere leaping off the screen. You really buy that anyone locked up in this place would eventually start to lose their sanity. Not to mention that in this game, the asylum is set on an island separate from Gotham City, so when the inmates break loose and begin to run amok, this creates an isolated feeling that Batman is stranded on his own away from the city and any form of help or backup. The game also has many collectibles and secrets to find hidden throughout the map. These really complement the game as they truly open up Arkham Asylum and allow the player to explore the map even more. There's audio tapes of the criminals' therapy sessions to collect. These are great as they help give background to the criminals and give the player a deeper look into their psychology. Each of the criminals' therapy tapes demonstrate their personalities and do a great job in giving you some insight into their view on the world and how they see Batman.
Anyway, I thought it would be good to talk about your childhood.
Oh, ever heard of romance, Doc? I don't give up the goods for free. You'll have to try harder.
What are you hiding?
Didn't you hear me? You scratch my back, Doc, and, well, I won't have you wrapped in plastic and left in a gutter.
There are symbols hidden all over the island that tell the story of Amadeus Arkham, the tragic founder of the asylum, detailing his reasons for building the asylum, his treatment of the patients during his time there, and the eventual loss of his sanity. This was also touched upon in the Arkham Asylum graphic novel, but there it was explored in far greater and more graphic detail. These symbols are great, adding an intriguing mystery to solve. One of the biggest secrets of this game was the hidden room in the Warden's office that teased the sequel, with blueprints of the area of Gotham that would be turned into Arkham City in the next game. This secret was so well hidden that Rocksteady themselves had to reveal its existence several months after this game's release. And of course, you can't forget about the countless trophies the Riddler has hidden across the island for Batman to find, but more on them later. These collectibles are all immensely fun to find and really help to give the player an immersive experience. I was one of those perfectionists who collected every therapy tape, deciphered every symbol, and tracked down every Riddler trophy, and I was surprised at how it never got tedious. One of the best things about the secrets is that they are all over the place, so you'll end up finding many of these collectibles along the way as you play through the campaign. Some of the collectibles are not immediately accessible, as they'll be in areas that you can't get to, but as the game goes on you start to unlock new gadgets that allow you to do certain abilities. So, if earlier in the game you come across a collectible you can't get to, later you'll unlock a gadget that allows you to gain access to that collectible, also granting the player the opportunity to go back and explore new areas that couldn't be accessed before. I love games that do that. The secrets and collectibles in this game were all incredibly well placed and had a lot of thought put into them. Easily one of the best things about Arkham Asylum is its array of characters. There is a smaller selection of characters in this game when you compare it to the later installments, but that's one of the great things about this game. The smaller selection of characters helps in making the setting for the game feel more confined. Each character plays their role in the story incredibly well. Throughout the game, Batman communicates through comms with Barbara Gordon, also known as Oracle. She acts as Batman's source of intel behind the scenes, aiding him with her computer expertise and providing him with required information while he's out fighting crime. You can't have a Batman story without James Gordon, the well-respected police commissioner and Barbara's father. He is one of Batman's most loyal allies. In this game, right from their first interaction with each other, you really get the feeling that they've been doing this for a long time and that they have tremendous respect for one another.
Long night, Jim?
Joker invades City Hall and holds the mayor hostage, leaving it to me to juggle SWAT teams, the media, and you. Yeah, it's been a hell of a night.
Gordon isn't in the game that much, but when he is, his partnership with Batman is captured very well. You also have Aaron Cash, one of the senior security guards at Arkham. He's one of the more recent characters, having first appeared in the comics in 2003, only 5 years before this game's release. He's awesome. He's like Gordon in that he has tremendous respect for Batman and is the one who cheers Batman on and has faith that he'll stop the Joker and take back control of the asylum. There's Dr. Penelope Young, who's a psychiatrist and the head of research at the asylum, and the one in charge of the Titan project. She's a character created specifically for this game. You have Quincy Sharp, who is the warden of the asylum and is running for mayor of Gotham. Like Penelope Young, Sharp is an original character created specifically for this game. As the game goes on, it's revealed that he is as corrupt as the inmates, as Batman deduces through the symbols detailing the story of Amadeus Arkham that Sharp believes he is being possessed by the spirit of Amadeus, and that he is meant to continue carrying out Amadeus's messed up methods of treating the patients. One ally who is strangely absent from this game is Alfred. The loyal butler and Bruce's surrogate father figure is usually present in some way for a lot of Batman's outings, but in this game he's nowhere. Very strange. Robin and Nightwing are also absent, but along with Alfred make appearances later in the series. The allies all play their roles within the story, but where the game really shines is in its portrayal of the villains. The main villain of this game is the Joker, because of course he is. Having Jolly Mr. J be the main villain in the first game of this series makes complete sense. Just because the Joker is Batman's arch enemy, his opposite. If you're going to make a Batman game and have all the characters already established in that world, it makes sense to start with Batman's main antagonist. The Joker is voiced wonderfully by Mark Hamill, reprising his role from the animated series. To me, he is the Joker straight from the pages of the comics. It's crazy to think that Luke Skywalker ended up being the perfect voice for the Joker. Here, he's able to find the perfect balance in making the Joker sick and twisted, whilst also making him funny and a little bit silly.
Are they ready? Have you planted the explosives yet?
Good! Razor's just finishing his off now.
Good. Let's test them out.
No! No, I'm still up!
This was Hamill's first time voicing the Joker since the animated series in the 90s. You wouldn't think so. I was shocked when I found this out, as he slips so seamlessly back into the role, it's like the Clown Prince of Crime never left him. and it only further strengthens my opinion that Mark Hamill is the definitive Joker. And on top of all that, he literally has the word Arkham in his name. You can't tell me he wasn't born to play the Joker after seeing this.
Coincidence? I think not!
The rest of the villains in this game all leave their marks on the story, with most of them helping in driving the narrative forward. Given that Joker is the main villain, of course Harley Quinn is going to be present as well. In fact, it's because of Harley that the Joker escapes in the first place. With Paul Dini behind the writing of this game and as the creator of Harley, she ends up being one of the best realised characters in terms of writing. She's written just like she was back in the animated series. And just like with Mark Hamill as the Joker, the decision to also bring back Arlene Sorkin, the original voice actress for Harley, was another stroke of genius. Like Hamill, she slips back into the character with tremendous ease. Throughout a majority of the game, Harley acts as the Joker's second in command, doing most of his dirty work while the clown is elsewhere preparing for his grand plan to take down Batman. Bane is discovered in the depths of the asylum and reveals that Dr. Young has been experimenting on him, trying to perfect her Titan formula. Then the Joker sets him free and you battle him in a forgettable boss fight. More on that later. The venom chemicals Bane uses to become stronger play an integral part in the story. However, Bane himself only has one brief exchange with Batman, followed by that boss fight I just mentioned, and then that's it. He's absent from the rest of the game. Also, Bane is kinda portrayed as a big dumb idiot in this game. Bane is one of Batman's most intelligent foes. He's a strategist and is the only villain to have broken the bat, literally. Whereas here he's just a big dumb guy who runs around, smashes into walls and yells a lot. Yeah, while I stand by the characters being portrayed well, Bane might be the one exception. I just think he could have been portrayed better. Poison Ivy doesn't appear until about halfway through the campaign when Harley stumbles across her in her cell. Despite her not being on Joker's party list, Harley sets her free, leading to Ivy's plants almost taking over the whole island. Ivy's plants are deadly enough already, but the Joker allows Ivy a dosage of venom and her plants begin to grow stronger and deadlier than before. Poison Ivy is portrayed excellently in this game. Her hatred for humans for being so careless toward plant life and her belief that plants are superior is displayed wonderfully, with her referring to humans as merely meat sacks. Killer Croc just wants to kill Batman, simple as that, but when Ivy's plants become infected with Bane's venom and start wreaking havoc across Arkham, Batman learns that the spores required to create the antidote can be found in Croc's lair in the sewers. Batman ventures down under the asylum to find the hidden spores, leading to him coming into conflict with Croc. I'm a big fan of Killer Croc. He's one of my favourite Batman villains, and I love how he's portrayed in this game. Instead of making him some forgettable thug who works for others more powerful than him, Croc in this game is his own character and a full-on monster. But aside from the Joker, the standout villain in this game for me is Scarecrow.
You're in my world now!
Scarecrow's main motivation and driving factor is spreading fear, which he achieves by releasing his self-created fear toxins. These fear toxins cause the victim to hallucinate their worst fears, and several times throughout the game Scarecrow will pop up and give Batman a share of fear toxin, which plunges Batman into hallucinations of things such as the corpses of his dead parents taunting him, and nightmarish layouts that Batman must navigate his way around, all while avoiding Scarecrow's gaze. Something that I never hear people talk about is Scarecrow's introduction.
There is no crane. Only Scarecrow.
Batman exits the lift onto a dingy corridor, the lights flickering with the screams of people begging Dr. Crane to stop, but he declares that there is no Crane, only Scarecrow. Doctors and patients screaming and hallucinating as a result of the fear toxin, begging for their lives, and then we see Scarecrow's shadow illuminated on the wall, before he runs away, leaving a trail of deceased victims behind. You don't see Scarecrow at all, yet you know through this one scene that he's dangerous. It's a masterful setup for the villain. Victor Zsasz is also on the loose, showing up several times throughout the game. Zsasz is a serial killer and a complete psychopath. He kills using a knife, and after he's murdered his victims, he positions them in lifelike poses before he carves a tally mark into his own skin so he can keep count of and show off how many people he's killed. His insanity is portrayed well in this game. Whenever Zsasz crops up in the story, you really believe that this is a psychopath who bears no regard for human life and will commit murder without remorse. While Zsasz is portrayed very well, he doesn't really do that much within the story. Sure, sometimes he does propel the plot along, like when Batman needs to find Dr. Young and Joker reveals that Zsasz is holding her hostage, resulting in Batman having to save her, but aside from that, he only really pops up when the plot needs him to, or to fill time between bigger parts of the story. He'll be holding someone hostage, threatening to kill them, Batman shows up, you stealthily take him down, rinse repeat several times. Again, Zsasz is portrayed very well and feels intimidating, but just could have done more within the story. The Riddler is also in this game. Well, sort of. You never see him on screen, you only hear him through the comms and Batman's cowl. The Riddler isn't a part of the main story at all really, acting as something extra to do outside of the campaign. As I mentioned earlier, the Riddler's placed trophies in the shape of question marks all throughout the asylum, and challenges Batman to find them all to prove who the superior intellect is. But it isn't just the trophies you have to find, there are many riddles spread across Arkham to solve. These are great as there's always a small hint within the riddle and it allows you to search your surroundings for where the answer could be. It's easy enough so that you won't be left completely clueless, but it's also tricky enough that the answer isn't blatantly obvious. As I mentioned, the Riddler doesn't appear in this game at all, he's only heard through Batman's cowl. This is unfortunate as some way of interacting with the Riddler would have been awesome, but he is in all the later games and you actually do see him and get to interact with him in person, so it's not that big of an issue here. Even the villains that aren't in this game are at least referenced in some way. There are an unholy amount of references and Easter eggs throughout the game, many of them related in some way to the Batman villains that aren't here. Even some of the more minor villains like Warren White aka the Great White Shark are hinted at. These Easter eggs work great as merely a wink to the fans, but also do a great job in further fleshing out the world and teasing their existence before they appear in future installments. Originally, the game was also going to feature Mr. Freeze and the Mad Hatter, but they didn't fit into the game's narrative and so they were removed and saved for the sequel. I'm looking forward to talking about that. I feel that they made the right decision in removing Mr. Freeze and the Mad Hatter. The Mad Hatter is a master of hypnotism and is constantly throwing Batman into psychologically challenging hallucinations and delusional realities, and this game already has Scarecrow doing just that, so there would have been little point in having Mad Hatter feature, only for him to do the same thing. Mr. Freeze's one and only goal is finding a cure for his terminally ill wife. He isn't about causing chaos, he just wants to find a cure for her, and so having him be involved in the mayhem wouldn't work, as that's not in his character to do so. Pretty much all the characters are fantastically well realised in this game. Almost every one of them resonates with the player and has a part to play in the narrative. But of course, the only character I haven't spoken about yet is the Dark Knight himself. Batman is perfect in this game. This is the Batman I know and love from the comics. He's a symbol who's feared deeply by criminals. This is shown many times throughout the game. Whenever you approach a group of thugs or are stealthily taking a group of them out one by one, the thugs react with complete and utter terror, as if they're up against a monster. However, the game wisely doesn't portray him as a violent anti-hero who has no humanity and cripples everyone in his way. This is the version of Batman I'm not a big fan of. Yes, Batman does beat criminals up, maybe breaks a few bones and leaves them unconscious, but he doesn't cripple them and leave them paralysed. And of course, Batman doesn't kill. Now while I do believe that with some interpretations of the character and under the right circumstances, Batman killing can work, I do much prefer the idea of Batman not killing the criminals he fights. As a child, Bruce saw his parents gunned down in front of him by the type of scum he swore to fight against. He believes that his unwillingness to kill is what separates him from the criminals he fights. Thankfully, this game realises that masterfully, never having him kill and giving us a perfect balance with him unleashing his anger upon the criminals but never forgetting to show us his humanity. Batman's humanity is shown through the guilt he feels over the death of his parents. This is something that mostly only crops up during the hallucinations from Scarecrow's fear toxin. In one hallucination, they go all the way and have Batman start to relive the night of his parents' murder by having him hallucinate that the corridor he's walking on is the alleyway in which they were killed. This moment is really powerful and really makes you feel sympathy for him.
Stay where you are. I'll shoot.
I'll give you whatever you want.
Tom! Oh God, Tom!
Be quiet, lady. Just shut up.
Stay away from me! Run! Mommy!
It does a great job in showing us the guilt he feels for their deaths and how it literally changed his life forever, as he wouldn't even be Batman if they hadn't have been murdered. Something else this game does amazingly that a lot of other Batman mediums forget to show is Batman's detective skills. Yeah, make no mistake, along with being a superhero, Batman is a detective, often referred to as the world's greatest detective. This is something that pretty much all the movies forget to include, although the upcoming Batman movie will apparently be a detective story. Seriously, thank you so much, Matt Reeves. But this game and all the following games perfectly show off Batman's skills as a detective. A great example is when Batman goes to Dr. Young's office to find her safe where she keeps the secret formula for the Titan project.
Someone has already got to the safe. The only question now is, who opened it? No sign of forced entry. Whoever opened it knew the combination. Let's see.
Good. Dr. Young got to her notes before Joker. She's taken them to hide somewhere.
He looks at his surroundings and little clues to construct what most likely happened. After seeing footage of Young accessing the safe, Batman scans her fingerprints so he can then find her. This happens several times in the game on various cases. It displays Batman's detective skills excellently, having him search for clues and bits of evidence and having him figure out what happened. In terms of Batman's look, this game goes with the standard Batsuit that we all know, and it's great. In most of the movies they make it black rubber, and while that's cool, I much prefer the grey armour, not to mention the black cape, cowl and bat logo, and the yellow utility belt. To me, when I think of the look of Batman, this is what comes to mind. Also, the Batsuit not having bat nipples, that's a massive plus. Just, yeah, get them out of here. And to me, Kevin Conroy is still the best Batman to this day. While I love Christian Bale, Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton, Conroy honestly is Batman to me. He's able to do the gritty, serious voice of Batman and make it sound so natural to him. The way he delivers his lines is just how I imagine Batman would say them. He's so good that when I'm reading Batman comics, I think of his voice saying Batman's dialogue as I'm reading it. Bringing back Conroy, Hamill and Sorkin I think elevates this game in many ways. The scenes their characters have together, the exchanges they have with one another, it's very reminiscent of the animated series. And the rivalry between Batman and the Joker is captured so perfectly here, in large part due to how perfect Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill's voice acting is. You honestly can't imagine anyone else delivering these lines. I hate to say this just because everybody that's talked about these games has said it, but it's too true to deny. This game really does make you feel like Batman. Part of this is due to how excellently realised the characters are, but a lot of it is due to the gameplay. The gameplay in Arkham Asylum is viewed from a standard third-person perspective, with Batman being visible on screen and with the player being able to freely rotate the camera around him. At the start of the game, when the Joker breaks free, Batman has to follow him through an area of the asylum, along the way having several encounters with his thugs. This entire opening acts as a tutorial, allowing the player to get used to the gameplay, giving them chance to get a grasp of the moves and approaches that are available here. Then after this, when Batman first emerges out into the open and overlooks the island, this is where the player can freely explore the island with only a couple of areas remaining inaccessible until later in the game. Something Arkham Asylum made popular was the now infamous detective mode. While there were some games that had used this before, this game was the one to really make it popular along with the rest of the Arkham games, to a point where many video games since have used it. The detective mode system is activated from within Batman's cowl and allows him to see room layouts, also highlighting enemies and objects of importance. Many have criticised this part of the game, calling it lazy, as it makes it easy for the player to see where enemies are and how to take them out. I strongly disagree with this statement, however. I think the detective mode is a great addition to the game and helps in making the player feel like Batman, with detective mode allowing you to watch enemies from the shadows and plan out your attacks for taking them out. The stealth and combat are amazing in this game. These are integral to Batman's character, and this game does both masterfully. This is something that all the games in this series do well, but all the credit goes to this game, with it being the first one in the series, laying the ground for the other games to follow on. The stealth scenarios in this game usually consist of a room of henchmen, which Batman has to take out without being spotted. There are gargoyles up high for Batman to grapple onto so he can get a wide view of the room and move around without being seen. This allows the player to attack the thugs from above and then retreat back into the shadows until all of them have been taken out. It's not always as easy as that, however, as sometimes the thugs will stay together in a pair or even start a new patrol route. This requires the player to figure out their next move and adapt to the changes. Every time you take out one of the thugs, you can see the heart rate of the remaining thugs start to increase through detective mode, as the situation becomes more stressful for them and as they start to fear where Batman will strike next. By the time there's only one thug left, he's scared out of his wits. He begins yelling out at Batman to stay away from him. He's visibly jumpy and on occasion will shoot at the tiniest of noises, such as steam from a pipe. This really makes the player feel like Batman, preying on the fear of the criminals. The combat is simple yet effective, with the free flow combat consisting of attack, counter and stun. The combat itself is pretty standard, but it does a great job at making you feel cool, with Batman being able to fight a room of up to 20 thugs and walk away victorious, and while in battle you can counter other enemy attacks when needed and then continue with who you're fighting at that moment. You can stun enemies by wielding Batman's cape to knock them off balance and allow yourself a chance to attack them while they're trying to regain focus. This is useful when battling enemies who have weapons and as a result can't be attacked head on. Whether they're using shields, stunning sticks or knives, stunning them will distract them long enough for Batman to get past their defense and attack them. These different enemy types help to even out the different takedowns and make it so that the combat never gets old. Not to mention that gadgets like batarangs and the Batclaw can be used to assist Batman in taking out the criminals when in battle, which adds new mechanics and takedowns to the game. The combat of this game combined with the gadgets available here make fighting enemies a blast, and as I said, really makes you feel like Batman as you're progressing through the game. Now let's talk about the bosses in this game. They're okay. The boss fights are something that the next game greatly improves upon. That being said, the bosses here aren't awful, they range from mediocre to just good. There are several bosses against some of the Joker's thugs who have had a dose of Titan. There's not really too much to say about these fights. They consist of allowing the thugs to charge at you, you throw a batarang to knock him off balance, you punch him while he's dizzy, and do this until he's down. The Titan thugs are only pawns of the Joker, acting as distractions for Batman in the narrative anyway. They're just thugs of no real importance to the story, and they aren't any big name villains, so I'm fine with them only being used as obstacles set by the Joker. As I hinted at before, the boss fight with Bane isn't too good. It's my least favourite in the game. It's basically just like the fights against the Titan thugs, only it's against Bane, and it's unbelievably easy and repetitive. You just allow him to charge at you, throw a batarang to make him dizzy, wait until he stuns himself by crashing into a wall, only for you to go over and land a few punches before he regains focus. Rinse repeat until the end of the boss. As I just mentioned, the boss fights against the Titan thugs have almost the same approach, but as I also pointed out, they were merely forgettable and unimportant thugs that work for Joker, so I'm not too upset about them not being anything special. But Bane is a fully developed supercriminal and one of the most popular Batman villains. His boss fight could and should have been so much better. This is such a mediocre boss fight for a villain as great as Bane. Poison Ivy has a boss fight near the end of the campaign, where she conjures a giant plant from the ground and does battle with Batman from within the plant. This boss fight is okay. It's just your standard boss fight where the goal is to dodge enemy attacks while looking for the enemy's weak spot, then wait for an opportunity to hit said weak spot. While I said that this is just a standard enemy boss fight, it is saved by being visually interesting, as the goal is to battle this giant killer plant, but this boss throws a lot at you by also having Ivy bring in thugs and Arkham security guards who have all been seduced by her powers, and so try to attack Batman. So throughout the fight you need to dodge Ivy's attacks from the plant whilst waiting to hit its weak spot, but you also need to be wary of seduced thugs trying to attack you during all of this. I find this good as it means this fight is constantly challenging you and always makes the player need to be on their guard. Not a lot of people talk about this boss fight in a positive way, but I like it. It's nothing amazing, but I think it's a fun and challenging boss fight. There's the boss against Killer Croc down in his lair in the sewers. This is my favourite boss in the game as it isn't a standard boss fight where you confront him head on. Batman must navigate this sewer system to find these hidden spores, however Croc is hiding in the watery depths of these sewers, waiting for the right moment to strike. To make matters worse, the only means of exploring this sewer network is on these wooden floating platforms that if walked upon too fast will send sound waves through the water to Croc, giving away Batman's position, forcing the player to move slowly so as to avoid being attacked. This boss fight is great as it truly puts the player on guard at all times. You can hear nothing but the eerie dripping of water echoing through the tunnels, and even worse, Croc breathing, patiently waiting for the moment to sound the dinner bell. And when Croc finally strikes, he leaps from the water and moves in for the kill, and while all you have to do is throw a batarang to activate his electric collar, which sends him tumbling back into the water, you can still feel Croc's presence even after stopping his attacks. The layout to this boss fight is amazing, with a maze of tunnels filled with murky water and old bones scattered about the place. You really buy that this is a place to avoid, and that anyone who enters has a serious chance of becoming food. The end of this boss fight perfectly demonstrates Batman's skills at preparation and outsmarting his enemies. After collecting all the hidden spores, Batman starts to make his way back when Croc begins to chase him from underwater. Batman makes it to the exit when a gate crashes down, trapping him. Croc emerges from the water and moves in for the kill. Until... Batman detonates the explosive jelly placed on the ground before entering Croc's lair. This one moment shows Batman's skill at always being one step ahead of his enemies, and it's a perfect demonstration of Batman's preparation skills and an epic end to this boss fight.
I will find you!
Also present are the boss fights against Scarecrow. Batman ingests his fear toxins several times throughout the game, making him hallucinate that he is in creepy alternate versions of the asylum. This happens 3 times in total, with the objective being pretty straightforward, where you simply need to navigate your way around these trippy layouts while trying to avoid Scarecrow's gaze. Some could argue that these don't count as boss fights, as you're merely navigating your way around whilst trying to stay hidden, but the 3rd time this happens after you've reached the end of the layout, you actually do get to confront Scarecrow somewhat, so I say that by this point it does count as being a boss fight. These hallucination levels are amazing, they are very well designed and thought out, and Scarecrow truly is creepy in these moments, looming over Batman with those glowing yellow eyes whilst brandishing those syringes full of fear toxin on the ends of his fingers. And the 3rd Scarecrow boss has one of the best moments in the game, as Batman is starting to cough at the fear gas once again. The transition into this is so trippy, as the game itself makes the player think that their console is broken for a moment. It then starts showing the opening of the game again, only for it to be revealed that this is part of Batman's hallucination, with it showing an alternate version of the opening, where now the Joker is taking Batman to the asylum, which is now being run by the villains. And then of course, there's the big one, the end boss fight where Batman finally confronts the Joker. To set the scene, it starts off a lot like the other confrontations with him, where he pits Batman against a couple of Titan thugs, with a load of regular thugs to fight as well. Once all of these are down, Batman tries to protect Gordon and gets himself injected with Titan, much to the Joker's pleasure. However, Batman has the psychological strength to resist the effects. Lamenting that the months of planning he has spent on this takeover have all been for nothing, Joker injects himself with Titan formula. Outside, news helicopters gather to cover what is about to unfold when we see the effects that Titan has had on the Joker. In his new state, the Joker announces to Batman and to Gotham that this will be their ultimate fight to the death. Joker taunts Batman, telling him to give in, resisting the Titan formula and allow himself to change. Batman refuses and uses the antidote to the Titan formula on himself, something which the Joker finds hysterical, with the objective from here being simply to take down the Joker in his Titan form. Now I have to say, I'm a little bit mixed on this boss fight. I love the look of Titan Joker. I think it's a unique design and does a great job in differentiating his transformation from the others. While the henchmen merely became big brutes after taking the Titan, the Joker has become like a monster, and you can tell he has had the highest dosage of Titan just by looking at him. The problem with this final boss fight is the same problem I had with the boss fight against Bane. It's mediocre and unbelievably easy. You just avoid the Joker's giant punches, then when he runs off you fight another group of thugs, you pull the Joker down while his back is turned, punch him around while he's stuck, rinse repeat until the end. There's nothing new or special to this boss fight, which is even more of a shame with it being the final boss of the game. The final confrontation between Batman and the Joker, which the entire game has been building up to. I once heard someone say how this boss could have been improved if Batman didn't take the antidote and did transform into a giant mutation himself, making it so that this boss is Titan Batman versus Titan Joker. I don't know about that. I don't think that this would have improved it necessarily. I think this boss could have been improved if it had more thought put into it and was more about strategy. Maybe have it so you can't fight the Joker head on and have to strategize each attack, but once you've performed an attack, the Joker won't be fooled a second time, making it so you can't use that same tactic again, forcing the player to use new tactics, something similar to the fight against Mr. Freeze in Arkham City. I feel that this could have truly challenged the player and made this an amazing final battle against the Joker. That being said, even with my criticism for this boss fight, the way it ends is so epic. It's a great ending to a mediocre boss fight.
You can't beat me. I'm actually going to win. Ready for the next round?
Always.
What?
I'll never let you win. Never.
The ending to this game is so satisfying. The police finally have control of the asylum back, and most of the criminals are back in custody. It feels so satisfying to see Arkham back under control with police rounding up the criminals. You feel like you've been on a crazy adventure and that you've done your duty in stopping the chaos. The moment where Batman and Gordon reunite and Gordon expresses his gratitude to Batman is such a great final moment between the two. It's another great moment at showing the respect they have for one another. As a nice wink to the fans, a report comes through Gordon's radio that the Gotham Bank has just been robbed by Two-Face, and even after all he has been through that night, Batman rushes off towards Gotham to continue his fight against crime. To me, the biggest reason why Batman Arkham Asylum is such a perfect Batman game is because it was clearly made with the intention to make the best game possible and with a clear love of the character. I think this was the same reason why Marvel's Spider-Man for the PS4 was so great, because it was made with a lot of love and care and was intended to be the definitive experience. To me, when I think of the definitive Batman experience, it's this game that immediately comes to mind, with well-realised characters, superb voice acting all round, flawless gameplay and complex storytelling and world building. You'd think that it would be impossible for Rocksteady to make a follow-up that's as good as this. Well, believe it or not only did Rocksteady make the sequel as good as this game, they made it even better. I can't wait to talk more about that next time. Join me for that.
same bat time, same bat channel.
But regardless, Batman Arkham Asylum is still a classic 12 years later and is still to this day the perfect Batman game.